Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. As always, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for all the support. Thank you for all the messages. Thank you for all the emails. Thank you for everything that you've sent the show's way. And especially thank you for all the suggestions that you sent for topics, because as I was just talking about with my guest, this topic in particular is one that has popped up as a suggestion from you as listeners every so often throughout the 4 years that I've done this. And I've always been looking for an opportunity to specifically really dive into this topic. And I'm really glad that I'm able to today. And that is the topic of training point guards, making sure that the point guard in your program is a floor general, making sure that they are have their skill set exactly where it is that they need to be, that they're leaders on the court, talk a little bit about individual skill work they need to do, talk about ways and practices to make sure that you're developing your guards, developing your point guards, all that good stuff. That's what we're going to dive into today. So I'm very happy to get into this with my guest, who is the head boys basketball coach out at Swickley Academy. Very happy to be joined by Coach Mike Iuzzolino today. Coach, appreciate you joining us today. Thank you very much. How are you doing today?
Everything's great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Look forward to spending this time with you and talking a little bit about point guard play.
Awesome. Coach, let's go ahead and get started with you. Talk us through your basketball journey. Talk us through your coaching journey. And how did you ultimately end up at Swickley Academy?
Yeah, so this is basically my 31st year in basketball.
Wow.
I played Division I basketball, Penn State. For 2 years. Did not go real well for me at the beginning. I averaged about 2 points a game. Transferred over to a smaller Division I program in St. Francis, PA. And then in 1991, I was the 35th pick overall by the Dallas Mavericks. Played with the Mavericks for a couple years from 91 through 93. Spent a little time in the CBA and then spent the next 10 years over in Italy and Spain. So had a 12-year professional playing career. From there, I went into college coaching. Started out actually Division I women's basketball for 3 years. That's where I got my start in college basketball. Then I was a Division III assistant coach for 4 years, and then the last 11 years I've been in Division I level. So I've been very fortunate and blessed to be part of this game all my life. It's all that I've really ever done, and been able to meet a lot of great people and be mentored by a lot of great coaches. So I've been very fortunate to learn a lot of different styles of play and player development. And this is my first time of being a head coach at the high school level.
So a couple of things from your journey that I'm curious about your thoughts on. When throughout your playing career, when did you really start to look at coaching as a viable option for you after playing? Was that something that you were always looking at doing? Was that something where an opportunity just kind of arose and you thought, I'll give this a shot? Where did coaching kind of fit into your overall life plan post-playing career?
I don't really think I thought about it that much. It kind of just happened. So I think like a lot of players, when you get done playing, you're not sure what you want to do next.
Yeah, right.
It's a long grind, and you're not sure the next steps, and the next steps kind of just follow. What I did was I took a little time off and just did some personal training with some kids to try to help them and give back, teaching them how to do things and the right way to train and play, and kind of stayed involved that way. And then just so happened that an opportunity came up, and I looked at the situation, evaluated it, and it turned out to be something that I wanted to do. And I've always loved the game, and I think with coaching, the nice thing is, you have the opportunity to give back.
Sure. Yeah.
That way. We think of a lot of coaches, just wins and losses, and I love the win just like anybody else. And
Of course.
but the opportunity to help young people and to get back to a game I love and to be part of the game I love. Um,
Yeah.
I feel very blessed to be fortunate to continue to be able to do this.
Yeah, no, and I think that's great when you have that, as you mentioned, that passion for it, and that passion never goes away. But to be able to transition that into the coaching world, because I know just from stories that I've heard or experiences I've talked to of other players that transition can be difficult when playing is such a big part of your identity that for not everybody coaching isn't necessarily for them, so to find whatever that next step is going to be, I know for some could be a difficult process. So for you to have the ability that you've loved and love coaching, and to be able to jump right into that, definitely was is awesome that was you're able to keep yourself in the game of basketball, like you said, for I think 35 years, I think it is that you said,
Yeah,
which is
31 years. Yeah, that's
31
right.
years. That's
Yep.
incredible. And then finally, Coach, on your journey, I'm just curious about what have you had to learn being now at the high school level? You've been obviously playing at such a high level, coaching, at the collegiate ranks, so you're, seeing how programs are run that way and the expectations that way. But now that you're on the high school level, what are some of the adjustments, if any, that you kind of had to make with working with guys at the high school level, and what's that process been like for you?
Yeah, I think first, first there are some similarities in this, and I think that one of the things that you have to do always as a coach, whether it's at the collegiate level or the high school level, is you have to set high expectations for guys and then help them to achieve that. I'm a big believer in making sure that people understand what's expected of them. And again, that doesn't matter if
Hmm.
you're at high school or you're college. You know, things are expected of you, and you have responsibilities, and you have to hold them accountable to that. And I think that that's one of the things that's really been a smooth transition because I think good players really want to be held accountable and be coached.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Obviously differences. At the collegiate level, you basically have them 24/7. Now, obviously,
Yeah,
they
they're
have
yours.
classes and things, and but you're involved in pretty much all aspects of their lives in terms of their academics and their development, and how the meals that you eat together, all those
Mm,
things.
yeah,
Where at high school you still have the situation where parents are involved and they have lives outside of basketball, and some of them play two sports. um, and
right.
um, you know, workouts in the preseason are optional. Um, you can't force kids to come, so it's a little bit different in that. So you have to make adjustments for things that come up that you might not be used to in that regard. Having that complete control over the situation.
Right. Yeah. At that, right. Because as you were saying, at that collegiate level, like their life is, they're going to school, but then, it's dominated by basketball. It's such a presence in their life that it's such a huge part of what they're doing while they're in college. But to be able to, realize that, okay, they're in high school, they're doing, like you said, multiple sports or things involved with family and stuff like that. It's like, oh, I don't get to get these guys, as maybe as much as I would want to, or as much as I'm used to, but gotta let go maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
type of things are definitely, definitely different. And I think some of the other things are different is, like I
Hmm.
said, at our school, we don't cut. So
Yeah, you mentioned
sometimes,
that.
sometimes you have players that are on the team just to be on the team. Um, and they're not really very good basketball players
Yeah.
or, but you have to, you incorporate those kids and you try to help them because, that's part of their lives too. And that's part of that high school experience.
Hmm.
Um, where you have kids that, you know, may never get on the court at all ever, just because of that ability. But they're a big part of the team and they love being part of the team, and you have to incorporate them in that team.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely something also to consider. You mentioned, and I thought that was pretty telling, right? The high school experience and making sure
Yeah,
that
that was
they're
the
they're
hardest
getting that.
part at the beginning of my
Yeah.
transition, where you have guys who can't catch a pass or can't make a shot. You know what I mean? And all
Yeah,
those
yeah.
things, and
Yeah.
we don't cut them. So like, I wasn't used to that at the beginning, and But here's the one thing I learned, from in college. Whether we had the one thing nice at Robin was whether we had our leading scorer or whether you were a walk-on, you were always coached the same way.
Mm,
The same
same expectations. Yeah.
expectations. We'd yell at you the same. You'd have to run the same sprints. There was never any difference.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I tried to implement here in high school, that everybody's going to be treated the same. If you came out for the team, and then you're going to be coached. So that's
Yeah.
how I try to do it. Obviously it's a little different in terms of talent level, but still, I just
Yeah.
think that
Just
doing
still
that
be
is,
coached.
yeah, coach them up.
For sure. Coach, before we dive into the topic fully, always like to, when I have the opportunity, kind of pick guest brain and talk a little bit about culture. I know it's such a catch-all term that we use for so many things, and everyone has their own definition. And I know at Swickley, as a private school, I know the expectations may be a little bit different on the academic side, and so culture may look a little bit different there. But I am curious about, how would you describe kind of what the culture is for the program at Swickley, and what was the process of getting it developed and off the ground?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. Like, I think one of the big things with culture that when you become a head coach that you have to learn is this, that everybody sometimes, like, if you want to create a culture that is not who you are, it's just something that you read in a book, it's really hard to do that. And here's what I mean by the culture that I wanted to uh, that I wanted to create is who I am as a person, who I was as a player. So I talked to the parents about, this is what we're going to be doing on a daily basis. So, like, there's four things that I always talk about. First is we're going to have a competitive environment, because that's who I always was as a player. Like, I love to compete. Um, we're going to do drills every day in practice that's going to compete. There's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. Doesn't matter if it's a shooting drill, a 5-on-5 drill, a 1-on-1 drill, a free throw. Everything's going to be competition. Um, that we do that. So, like, I think that's one of the things in my culture that I want to create, that type of competitive environment. I think the second thing is making sure that people have discipline and understand what that means. That means, when you want to be a good player and you want to be successful, you have to sacrifice other things in your life. You can't always go out and do all the things you want to do. There has to be a lot of
Right.
sacrifices. Guys say, well, I always tell them, everybody practices 2 hours a day. What are you doing outside of this practice? That's discipline, and accountability to all that. Three, I'm a big believer in selflessness. Like, if you're, whatever your role is determined, that role, whether your role is you're on the bench as a cheerleader, you're come in for 2 minutes to be a defensive stopper, or you're the leading scorer, you have to have selflessness, that you know that role is the most important role that you have on that team. Some people only
Yeah.
look at the role of being the leading scorer. Oh, I'm not the leading scorer, so that's not. Every role is important, and I try to emphasize about the team. And the last is just about joy and having fun. Like, I always joke with the guys. Like, I always say to them, why are you playing this game? And they'll say, well, I want to be a college player. And I say, no, that's an end. Like,
Yeah.
getting to college is the end. That's not the reason why you play. You know what I mean? And you have to find that why, that passion of why you do this. Um, for me,
Hmm.
I always was involved in the game. Like, I never found a whole lot of satisfactions over the things that I accomplished. I made the NBA. I did some great. I won. I went to the NCAA tournament. Those things were never as fun as the journey for me. So, like, I enjoyed the journey. My passion and my why was, I like the journey. I like the process to get to the promised land, or the goal. You know what I mean? But the journey was,
Sure.
what really is exciting. So I always try to make it, like, if you find your why for it, then it becomes a passion and fun, and that's kind of the culture that I want to create through a couple of those things.
Well, and I think that that's also super important where basketball is, right now, where we see a lot of guys who, at least I read a lot about this, or see a lot about this, of coaches who kind of have players who've kind of lost their passion, or maybe that's all they're doing. They're playing all the time, and they're working on basketball all the time, but they've kind of they're just so focused, as you mentioned, right, on the end goal or on, something else that they, they're just not enjoying playing basketball. They're not enjoying the journey of it. And I think it's just so sad when we see so many great players and really talented guys and girls who, for one case or the other, have been failed in a way by their coaches or trainers because they let their players kind of lose sight of their love for the game and their passion for the game. And I think that you mentioned that's a really good point of making sure that your guys or your girls or whoever it is enjoy being as a part of the program because they should be looking back fondly on their experience as a basketball player, no matter how far it is that they go.
Yeah, yeah. The hard part is we're an Instagram society. Everybody things got to happen right away and immediately, and that's not how sports works.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. Coach, transitioning about point guards. As we get into our topic here, let's kind of start at the base level of what are specific expectations that you set out for the point guard that's in your program? What is the skill set that you require for them to be effective in your role? Like, what is a point guard that's going to be playing at Swickley going to be expected to be able to do?
Yeah, I think I'll start by talking about a little bit of a joke here. When I'd go out recruiting, and my head coach would call me up and he'd say, "Hey, how was the guy?" And I would say that you went to see, and I'd say, "Well, besides not being able to dribble, shoot, or pass, he was pretty good." And that's a little joke because
Yeah.
obviously, to me, the most important thing that any point guard has are a a basic fundamentals of the game, that they have a mastery of the fundamentals of the game. That's really important. Are they able to handle the ball with the ball on a string? Um, you know, do they take and make big shots? Are they able to do that? Do they make the passes on time, on target passes where they help guys get better? And help them improve their game. You know what I mean? And I think that's the big thing with point guards. The more fundamentally sound they are, the better they can help your engine run, and the point guard really runs the team. So that's where I start at
Hmm.
the base level of all the fundamentals, handling the ball, being able to shoot the ball, and definitely being able to pass the ball. Because you know, guys, like bigs need help getting the ball in the right position sometimes.
Yep.
Shooters need the ball in the right spot. And if a point guard can't put it there, then it messes up a lot of stuff. So
So,
I always start with all the fundamentals of
go
the
ahead.
game.
Yeah. So when you're looking at a guy, I guess, and you're working with a guy, maybe it's for the first time you've seen him, as you're working through them, what are those fundamentals when you look at them? Because even within, having fundamentals, there's definitely players who really got fundamentals strong versus like okay fundamentals versus like really good ones. For you, what kind of lets you key in on, okay, this is a guy who's really fundamentally strong versus a guy who's all right but needs work? How do you as a coach kind of make sure that you're able to clearly tell the difference between those two?
I think the biggest thing is a player who's able to get out of trouble. Um, because a lot of your point guards, and a lot of things that happen with your point guard, either coming off ball screens, um, getting
Okay.
downhill, getting into the paint. One of the things I really talk about is for our point guards to be able to get into the paint. Um, Paint touches are so important. Like you talk to NBA teams, they score at such a higher level when they have paint touches. Um, so when our point guards get into the paint, are they able to get in there and make plays? And if they get in
Mm-hmm.
there and they're not able to make a play, can they get themselves out of trouble? Um, and I think that's an important aspect of that people don't really understand. So about building that trust with your point guard, he goes in there, he gets in the paint. Does he play off 2 feet? Does he jump stop, or is he just jumping in the air to try to find a path? Um,
Right,
you
out of
know,
control. Yeah.
yeah. So I think one of the big things is, are they able to get, when they get into trouble, are they able to get out of it? Because if a point guard handles the ball a lot for teams, especially at the high school level, because a lot of times the point guard's handling the ball a lot more, they're going to put themselves in difficult situations. And do they just turn it over, or are they able to stay under control and make a play, either just to get out of trouble or to make a play for a score?
Yeah, and how much of that, coach, do you think is something that a coach can work with a guy and teach that ability versus them needing to rep it through, practice it through, and kind of, work their way through developing that skill set?
Yeah, I think one of the things is you have to get your guard, your point guard or any guard, just comfortable with what situations they're going to see, and you have to rep that every day. Um, you know, we just had a at Swickley Academy last 2 weeks ago. We just had a great coaches clinic. We brought in John Calipari, Mark Few, Jeff Capel, Bob Hurley, senior high school coach, thing. And one of the things that was great, I listened to Mark Few talk about how every day they work on, because they're a big ball screen team, they work on all the different reads that they'll see every day. So he talks about, like, we'll see some teams will blitz the screen. This is what we do against it. And we work on doing that all the time. Some teams will hard hedge. This is what we do every day. It's just about making people feel comfortable with what you're going to do. So once you have your offensive system in and how you're playing, I think it's about those repetitions to make people feel comfortable. I do a lot of different drills with our point guard where, a lot of people do the shell drill. We do a shell drill where, the defense is behind the offense and he drives into the defense. Um, you know, he's like beat his guy, but then the help comes. Now he's got to make the reads of where guys are. Like getting
Mm,
guys
I like
comfortable
that.
in those situations really help point guards develop. Like I don't think people teach enough of the point guards, teach enough of the reads. Um, and some of it's feel. Some guys just have a great feel for the game and can read things, and other guys need to constantly work at those reads and feel comfortable with the reads. Like one of the things in our system, like we every time we have a drive, no matter where that drive comes from, whether it's the baseline or lane line, we're always going to have a guy in the opposite corner, a guy in the same side corner behind, a guy at the rim, and a guy at the top. So making guys feel comfortable, they know where their players are going to be. So when they get in there, they just already know where they can make a pass to. They just have to read the defense.
Yeah, and with that, there's, hearing about what you just said about in this situation, this is where our guys are. Like, hope what I imagine that does with your point guards is, like you said, it kind of gets them comfortable in those situations where maybe they get caught or maybe they get trapped or something breaks down a little bit because they have already this understanding of, okay, if this happens, I still know that I have certain guys that are supposed to be in certain spots. So hopefully, I would hope that that kind of keeps them from, a complete panic or a complete rushed, shot or turnover because they know where their guys are supposed to be.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that comfortability with those situations and putting them in there and knowing where guys are really helps them to feel comfortable with things.
You mentioned you just touched on this on your last answer, so if I'd ask a little bit more, specifically, Coach, about what is your offensive philosophy? What do you like to run as an offense, and how? I know it's obviously incredibly important, but what role and what expectation does your point guard have for the execution of what you're running on offense?
Yeah, I think the first thing, one, we want to play really fast and try to get a quick shot up, a great easy quick shot at the beginning. And I think one of the things that the point guard has to make sure is that people are running to their spaces, you know, um, because spacing is such important. We always talk about on offense, you know, we got to space the floor, and the defense wants to shrink the floor. So one of the things with our point guard is making sure that they pick a side of where they're going up the slot, either the right side or left side. This way, everybody knows where they have to run. First forward down's running rim ball side,
Mm.
second forward's running opposite slot, and the two wings are running down to the corner so we can get into our offense. We play a lot of ball screen offense. So we work on a lot of ball screens all the time. We work on ball screen shooting. We work on like different reads out of it, who's going to play, how they're going to play us. And really, we work on a ton of passing out of that because, you know, I think that you have to be able to throw different passes out of the ball screen, whether it's up over the top for a lob or up high or get around the defense and wrap that pass around. So we work on a lot of all the different breakdowns. We break down our ball screen stuff, you know, on 3-on-3s and 4-on-4s, where you have to read tag guys and things like that, read hedges and all those things. So I think that's one of the things that we really, really work hard on in our offense, the ball screen stuff.
Mm. Oh, great. I'm glad I was able to get your response on that. Um, Coach, individually, right? If I step away from that side and kind of work on pulling out your point guard and individual skill work, what individual skill work do you find, and have you found maybe even throughout your career that you really help kind of builds point guards best? You know, how do you kind of get point guards when you're working with them one on one or on an individual standpoint to whether it's master the fundamentals or whether it's to learn, the more intricate offensive concepts. What is it that you found has really worked to really develop point guards in that kind of one-on-one, more individuals type setting?
I think film work is really important for guards. Obviously we talked about the fundamentals, working on those, but I think
Mm-hmm.
I think when you start breaking things down in the film room and they see things that or you start looking at things in a way where you can slow it down for them and say, hey, look how this defense is playing. Look at where this tag guy is. Look at this post entry. What do you see on this play? Like, you got to sometimes get into their mind, because sometimes they're seeing things that you're not seeing. So I think that how you can help point guards see things better and become, better at reading the game is to slow it down with film and really talk about things and discuss things. Especially in the practice setting when you're doing these different drills, because then you have so many different situations that you can present to them, and
Yeah.
then you can go back and watch the film with them and talk about it and see what they're thinking too, because I think that's an important aspect, that you listen to them and how they're seeing things and what they're looking at.
What what goes into breaking down film with a guy? How do you, I guess, in your experience, how do you almost teach a guy how to, understand film? Is it a situation where you're just kind of going through the things that you see and you're teaching off them? Are you also kind of trying to get your guys' input on the things that they see? I'm always curious about coaches' way that they kind of go over film with their guys. I'm always looking for ways personally to get a little bit better at it as well.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that with the film situation is you have to have um you have to have your principles established with your team. Anybody can
Mm,
teach a play, anybody can draw something up and get a bucket, but to me, the most important aspect of it is the principles that you have established, and everybody has some different principles. Some people like play gap defense. Some people over deny. Um, you know, there's different things that they do offensively and defensively with their principles. But once you have the core principles established, I think once you start watching film with guys, you start pointing out the principles, because that's what you fall back on.
yeah.
We always talk about, you never rise to the occasion. You always think to the level of your training. And
I like that.
that's something that I
Mm.
stole that from the Navy SEALs. So
Hey, we're as a good coach, we take stuff from everywhere, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. So I always preach that to our team. We just never, so go back, and if you sink to the level of your training is those principles. So when you watch film with guys, okay, they might have made a good play here or something like that, and they think it's okay. But really, are they following what the principles of the program have established? Because the principles are the things that are going to win you games over and over and over. And
mm,
guys always want to say, "Oh, I hit this shot, or I did this, or thing." And don't get me
yeah,
wrong, some of that is good, but are
right.
you still following? Hey, I had a steal there. Okay, you had a steal there, but were you in your gap? You know what I mean? Or did you just make a great play? So, okay, you made one great play, and you gave up. I'll show you 5 others where you
Five
gave up
others you
lanes.
did. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What about these
So,
other five, right?
yeah, so like I try to base things on the principles of our program, and point out, like, even the small things, like, oh, a guy drove the gap here. Our guy iced just a half a second and got back, and look, that guy picked up the ball. Like, that's what we want to do. Okay, did it make a major impact of, like, people sometimes will look at the players, look at me like, okay, well, what was that about? Well, Yeah, this is the principle that we're teaching. Being in your gap, a guy drives, you fake at him, he picks up his dribble, and now they got to start the offense over. We do that 10 times. That helps us win games.
Yep.
And so I base a lot of my film sessions on like focusing on the principles of what we do.
Mm.
And again, like we have a thing where if a guy's driving in the slot and you're guarding the guy in the corner, we call that stunt and stay. We never leave the corner guy because I think that's the easiest shot in basketball.
So do a little
So
stunt at him, yeah, with
yeah, we
that
just like
focus,
fake
yeah,
up real quick at him, but we go back to our guy in the corner because we don't
right.
want to give up that corner three because I think that's the easiest shot in the game and the easiest path. So when that happens and we don't do it, like I don't attack like the player or what happened. I attack what we didn't follow the principle.
Yeah, it's
And I
not
think
personal.
sometimes,
Yeah.
yes, I think sometimes when you talk about not following the principle, guys are more receptive to that than you didn't do your job. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
look what you
It's
did
different.
here.
Yeah.
You messed it up. So
Yeah, the
when
language is different. Yeah.
yeah, so I try to talk about behaviors and principle rather than what you are actually doing.
Yeah. And I think that probably takes away maybe a little bit of the emotion or the reaction or the defensiveness because they just focus on the action rather than it being something seen as like a personal attack or something that, was, oh,
Correct.
coach doesn't like me or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, and you know as well as I do, film doesn't lie, so it can be brutally honest at times,
Oh
uh,
yeah, it'll
in a
expose a
way
lot
that
everything, good, bad, or
yeah,
otherwise.
in a
Yeah.
way that a lot of guys don't want to hear it. So I try to base most of our stuff on behaviors and principles to try to correct it. Because when I'm speaking to the one guy that did it, I want to be speaking to everybody.
Yeah, everyone's accountable to that
Correct. And
action,
if
right?
you
Or that
yeah, if you talk
principle.
about the principles of that, now you're bringing everybody into it, not just
Sure.
that person that made the mistake.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree. I agree with you on that. Coach, what goes into in your practices? What's the work that your guards, your point guards are doing during the practices? How do they kind of build on their, whether it's their skill set, whether that's familiarity with offense or defense or what otherwise? How are point guards purposely or intentionally getting better throughout your practices?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Number one, we do a guard forward breakdown um, every practice because I think that you know it's always important to all those guys have individual goals also. And if you don't ever attack the individual goals, I think sometimes they get frustrated with that. So we always have a guard forward segment in there and we break it down different days. Some days it's more shooting. So we start practice every day with ball handling for everybody. I think that's an important aspect of it to get guys handling the ball. Um, but some of the things that we'll work on, obviously, with our shooting, I'm big in the believer of making sure that we have correct footwork.
Okay, what does that
Footwork
look like
is
for you?
for us. It's always stepping in 1-2 into our shots. We never jump. We never like hop into anything. We try to teach them 1-2 and all that shots. We try to keep them butt down, hands ready all the time. Those type of things because never letting the ball come to you. You always go get the ball. Those type of things on our shooting. So we try to emphasize those things when we do our shooting work. Um, we do a lot of defense on the ball screen where we have a coach come over and set a screen with a pad. We play one-on-one games where a coach come over and set a screen with a pad, and that's how you have to get. You have no help. So you try to learn to get over a screen or get under a screen, shoot the gaps, those type of things, playing one-on-one. Not the easiest drill in the world, but if you can do it without a hedge or a help, maybe then when you have the hedge and help, it becomes a little bit easier.
Easier.
So we
Yeah.
put stress on it. We put stress on them that way. Um, we do another thing where we call a drill, one-on-one drill, where we call it Yukon. So we'll have a guard go maybe against a forward. It's one-on-one. And if you score, you can keep scoring until you box that guy out and get the rebound. So if he wants to score 10 points on you straight, laying it up, like you have to dig it
That's how
out
it's going to be. Yeah.
and get a little toughness there because one of the things that guards have to do a lot of times if we get beat off the bounce, the forwards are coming over to help. You got to be the guard that cracks down on that big to box out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yep.
so we do this thing where we play one-on-one, and if you score, you can just keep scoring. You can shoot 10 layups in a row if you want, till that guard drives you out and gets you out and gets the ball.
Yeah, they're gonna have to want it, right? They're gonna
Yeah.
have to get in there.
Yeah, and that's not just for our guards, our point guards. That's for all our guards, and we do it for the forwards too. So I think it's challenging in that each way.
Yeah. And so there is I can tell, Coach, a concentrated effort on skill work throughout your practices. It seems like that's something that's part of your identity, that you're always developing skills. There's always a skill work element to your practice plan.
There's always skill work for sure. Always skill work. I think that's you know one of the things one of the things that we do the first uh, three drills of practice are all different layup drills. Um, I don't know about you guys, but in high school and even when we were in college, we missed a lot of shots at the rim being challenged.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
and so we do a lot. We do a couple different layup drills to start um, every practice where you're getting challenged, either getting hit by a pad or you got to go at full speed, um, and make a pass and then lay it up. Those type of things, like put us in game situations. I just think finishing at the rim is so important for guys, and we start with that for all our players on those type of layup stuff, and then we go into team passing, either with a heavy ball or just the basic passes where you go into the paint and jump stop, kick the ball. I mean, it's basic elementary stuff, but um,
Oh, it's
it's
key. It's
it's inc-
essential.
yeah, it's incredible how like when guys catch the ball and they rip it out, how they don't cover a whole lot of space.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, you know, we really talk about catch to shoot. And then when you go by somebody, like we have guys in the corner and guys in the slot, like one dribble should get you into the paint. And then we play off 2 feet and make the passes that way, just basic fundamental things. Um, I just think the better fundamentally you are as a team, um, especially at the high school level, the better chance that you have to compete and win games.
Yeah, no, and all those, all those little things that you talked about, right? I think as it kind of circles back to what you just talked about on film, right? When you get, really excited about something that's happening on film that may not seem like a whole lot, but you know that it makes a huge difference, especially if you, like you said, you do it continually, right? And it's the same thing with skill work, right? You might not see, necessarily something, flashy or whatever the case may be is during the practice or whatever, but they get that action down or they get that movement down, when that time comes in a game and they can execute it, all of a sudden they're going to make a great play and everyone's going to be all excited and happy, all because of that little, continual skill work that you put in every single day.
Yeah, and I always talk about you are who your habits are.
Oh, yeah,
That's you,
yeah.
you are what your
It's a great
habits
one.
are. So like if you shoot slow in practice, you're going to shoot slow in the games. If you don't push the ball out in practice, you probably won't push it out in the game. Um, all those things. You just see the habits of guys that they do it over and over, and they do it at the pace you need them to do it to. And that was one of the hardest things that I had to get guys to understand at the high school level, how fast and what pace I need you to play at,
Hmm.
because I don't think they're used to that.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's an adjustment there, and we kind of talked about how for some guys it's seeing is believing, and you want them to believe before they have to experience it themselves, but that they got to kind of maybe get a little taste of it, and then it's like, oh, that's what Coach was saying the whole time.
Yeah, for sure.
Coach, talk about on the mental side about what work do you do with your point guards to train them to be like the coach on the court, to be the leaders, to be the ones who can, kind of run the show definitely on offense, but also probably have leadership areas elsewhere as well. What goes into those conversations or the training that you do to kind of mentally get your point guard ready for that role to be the, quote coach on the court, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that situational basketball, is important for guys to understand, especially your point guard time and score. Um, we play this little game called 60-7, where it's 60 all, and then the first team gets to 67. We start the clock with 2 minutes to go. So you could be up 67-60. We don't have a shot clock in PA,
Okay.
which makes it certain things a little more difficult and a little more
Yeah, yeah.
challenging. Um, So, we try to put our situation where we are in different situations all the time. And then I communicate with the point guards of what we're going to do in those situations. And I try to um, you know, get him to communicate to the other people. One of the things that I'll do is some of the mental things is I won't tell anybody the play but the point guard. And
Mm,
so when he comes up the court, he better make sure that everybody knows what we're in. If
get him
not,
all set. Yeah.
he's the one that's in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's one liable for it.
it's easy for me to call out, hey, play 5. But if I whisper to him, hey, we're in 5, now it's his responsibility to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing. Or I might change the defense and he might be the only person that knows. And then I'll say,
Mm.
okay, we're on the foul line. And does he huddle the team up to tell them? Does he walk around to tell everybody? How is he communicating that? And how is he making sure that everybody knows what we're in? So these are the things that I'll do, little things like that to see, can he handle those situations? Can he handle those type of things to be the coach on the court, or do I have to do that too? You know what I mean? Which is
Yeah.
not a problem, but like I try to figure that out sometimes.
Yeah, and I imagine it's an ongoing process where you're trying to get, you don't want to, at least I know as a coach, I don't want to be doing all the talking all the time, but I think that, you kind of brought up, the idea of like sometimes players don't know necessarily what that means to communicate or how to communicate that message. These are things that are not like necessarily skills they're born with, but as coaches, we got to make it something intentional to train them about how to do that sort of thing, how to bring guys together, like you said, let them know like what we're in or how to communicate something quickly. And so, we just can't expect our guys to know it if we haven't, taught them how to do it or what that's supposed to look like, right?
Sure. And sometimes I'll cheat him in practice. I'll call a couple bad calls on him, see how he
How
responds.
they react, yeah.
Yeah, or I might throw up an extra 2 or 3 points to the other team that nobody knows about to see if the point guard is aware of time and score. I might take a minute off the clock or something to see what goes on.
Test
Little
them a
things
bit.
like that to make sure that he knows what's going on in the game.
Yeah, no, I mean it's definitely important to, test them a little bit and make sure that they're where it is that they need to be. Coach, I want to flip because I want to make sure I ask specifically on the other side of the court. I this could probably go maybe for all of your players in terms of what your defensive expectations are, but for guards specifically or point guards specifically, are there certain, absolute like keys or musts that you instill in your guards when it comes to running defense the way that you want it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is we talk about, keeping the ball out of the middle of the floor. That goes for all our guys, keeping them on that sideline, baseline, and shrinking the floor. I always talk about the guys, if we can keep them on one side of the floor, we win the possession. It's usually when the team is able to get the ball going side to side 2, 3, 4 times is when you break down as a defense. So we really try to keep them on one side of the floor, keep them over on that sideline baseline, not let them get back to the middle. That's kind of the non-negotiable. And 2 is really just guard the ball. You know, a lot of defenses break down when they have to help a lot. So if you can guard the ball and keep that ball in front and contain and contest, I think that's an important aspect. I think it's one of the things that are different from high school to the college level and the pro level, obviously, is guys don't make a lot of shots that are contested.
Yeah,
So if you can
I agree.
contain a guy and keep a guy in front and they go to shoot it and you just put your hands up, like there's not a lot of high school kids that make those shots on a consistent basis. There's not a lot of Kevin Durant's out there and guys like that are high level. So at the high school level, we really talk about containing and contesting the ball at all times. Not giving up open shots, those type of things.
Where does defense fit into your practice plan? How are you, whether it's individual skill work on defense or teamwork, how does that kind of work into what you're doing in practice?
Yeah, I would think probably after the initial, the initial stuff, the initial 15 minutes of skill work, um, the next probably 30 minutes is all about our defensive stuff. We break it down into one-on-one defense. We break it down into help and recover defense. We break it down into shell 4-on-4 defense. Then we break it down into a disadvantage in the transition defense. So we're focusing on those parts every single day of our defense. So it's a big part of our practice plan. I kind of focus a little bit more on that defensive side and allow the assistant coaches while we're playing within that to, talk a little bit more about the offense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not a big offensive defensive coach. You know how like people say, okay, this is an offensive drill, this is a defensive drill. I'm
Sure.
in the middle, like this is both. Like you have to be coaching both within it. So even though we might term it a defensive transition drill, like you have to still be coaching the offense too, because
Yeah.
people run good offense. So, but those things, one-on-one defense, help and recover defense, 4-on-4 shell drill where you're at a disadvantage, transition where you're at a disadvantage. Those are things that we work on every single day. And the other thing that we work on really hard is our press. We like to press, trapping press, so we work on that a lot every day.
Mm. And so what are your principles on that? What are the expectations in terms, you talk about trapping, you talk about pressing. How do you get guards, point guards, whatever the case may be, to making sure that they're staying disciplined, they're making, right decisions off the press, right decisions off the trap, not being, reckless or out of control?
So on the offensive side, we keep it simple again with making sure that you go through your reads and getting comfortable with your reads. So when we get the ball in, I always have a saying, above, middle, behind. That's your looks. Every time you catch the ball, above, middle, behind. You should have a guy above, which we always do. We should have a guy in the middle. That's your second look. And if not, then we should throw the ball behind. That guy should be open. So I try on the offensive side to get our point guards and all our guards just to be comfortable with the reads. Because the easiest thing for a guard to do is when he gets it in bounds and here comes the trap, just throw it right back. And that's not
Yeah, yeah.
always, I mean, it's not the worst pass, but that's not always the best pass either. I just think if a guy can have those reads and feel comfortable doing that, it becomes second nature for him. Because, with any press, if you can get the ball above, you got a chance to get layups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 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 100%.
And then
Awesome.
defensively, we're a little reckless on the
Oh
press.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, we're gonna trap you really hard on the first pass, the initial entry. We try to throw it to the short side. If we throw it to the opposite side, we'll wait a little bit. But when you throw it to the short side, we're gonna trap you. And then we work really like to me that there's two aspects of the press. Number one, obviously trying to get a steal and get a turnover.
Sure.
That's number one. But number two is to try to speed the other team up to take a quick shot and a bad shot.
Rush them. Yeah.
Yeah, are they going to make a layup against your press once in a while? Yeah, but could they shoot 4 or 5 quick bad ones? No doubt about it. And that's one of the things that I've learned um, in PA without the shot clock of trying to speed teams up, because the hardest thing to me without the shot clock is this: when your team has to play a team that runs offense every possession for 2 minutes.
Oh, oh gosh. Yeah.
And
I've
that's
been
brutal.
there. I've been there.
Yeah, that's really brutal. So I would rather give up one layup and try to get them to take 6 or 7 quick shots than
Mm.
just sit there and play defense for 3 minutes every time.
Oh,
Um,
oh yeah, I agree.
So we're a little reckless on our press. We'll get after a little bit. We'll try to speed you up, take quick shots, and I don't really get worked up if you make one here and there.
Mm.
Now, obviously, if you're getting beat all night, you got to take it off. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you're gonna give up one or two every so
yeah,
often.
you're
But
going
like
to
you
give
said,
up 1 or 2, and that doesn't bother me. It bothers me more that if they just sit there and hold the ball on you and grind it out.
yeah. No, no. Oh yeah. Those, trust me. Arizona, thankfully, coach now has a shot clock, but I before they did not until a couple years ago, and I was sitting there grinding out those multi-minute possessions, and you just feel like helpless almost as a defense, because eventually, right, there's going to be a breakdown of some sort. Something's going to happen if you have to play defense for that long. And it was always tough to see my girls, and I felt like, not get rewarded for playing, such great defense, just because they get, worn down after a minute 15 or so. That was always frustrating.
Yeah, for
But
sure, for
yeah.
sure.
So couple more quick questions here before we hit our concluding segment, Coach, I wanted to, I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but I kind of wanted to address it, now, and that is, when you have a point guard, you have somebody who you trust to run the offense. I'm curious about your kind of philosophy and this is my point guard. I trust them. They're gonna be able to know what to run and what to call out because they're the ones playing on the court versus, I want to make sure that I'm in control of what it is that they're doing. I don't want to give them too much of that responsibility. I'll call things out and make sure that things are set up the way that they want them to be. Throughout your like coaching career and in your stops now, how do you kind of balance, kind of letting your point guard kind of make decisions based on what they see and the feel of how things are going versus wanting to kind of put them in more of that structured situation where you're calling specific things out?
Yeah, I haven't got to that point where I feel real comfortable of letting our any of our point guards ever to like run the whole offense. Um, Most of the time unless it's in transition. Obviously, transition situations a little different because you are just trying to get either a layup or get something in the secondary part of it. But
Hmm.
after misses or makes, sorry, I feel better when I'm in control of what we're calling, and making sure that they understand this is how we want to attack coming down. So just haven't given that up yet. Um, you know, that way, but that's uh, 40% of the game, the other 60 the team misses, right?
Yeah,
60%
yeah,
of
and your
the time.
transition
So they're
principles.
in transition or secondary, so they have that freedom. So half the game I'm probably calling, and probably half the game they're probably calling.
For sure. Uh, that was the other one I was going to ask you. So I guess it's a good time for me to ask this to you now, Coach, about talk about the transition, principles, the non-negotiables. Talk about where your point guard comes in and what their vital role is, your guards are into making sure the transitions run the way you want it to.
Yeah, the hardest thing that young players that and again, sometimes even in college, is the ability to run the space and attack space.
Hmm.
Um, that was one of the things that I always learned. The court is the same high school, college, in the pros. It's the same size court. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
94 feet and what is it, 50 feet wide or whatever, or something like that. Foul line's 15 feet. Okay, there's obviously difference in the 3-point line, but the court is the same space.
Hmm.
The thing that's great about the NBA is how they space the floor. It's amazing the spacing, and that's one of the things that has been very difficult at the high school level, is really to get guys to understand how to keep the floor spaced. I think that when you run to space and you keep your spacing in transition, you have the better opportunity to score because you know the high school kids can't close out space like NBA players can. Um,
Yeah, it's different for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so if you can keep that spacing in high school in your transition, you're going to have a great opportunity to score the basketball without either in your transition or secondary, because they just don't cover that space well. But that's one of the things. One of the things we try to set up is putting X's down on the floor where guys are supposed to run, so they know exactly where they're supposed to be, to try to help them, give them visualization of when they're running down the court. Yo, I'm the first forward down. I got to get the rim to the ball side. I'm the second forward down. I got to space out to the slot over there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Um, and that's probably been the hardest thing offensively that I've had to teach the guys. Like, you teach them a play, they'll run the play. You know what I mean? But running to space is something that has been very, very. There's been a little bit of a struggle for me.
Is that something that you find that you're continually working on? Is that kind of like with like skill work? Is that something that's a consistent emphasis in your practices?
Yeah, not so much skill work, more 5-on-0 stuff.
Mm,
I've had to spend more time like dummying offense. You know how like a lot of people just do their dummy offense half court. Um, we've had to do it where we either started half court and run in, or we do it off of a transition situation, because it just amazes me how sometimes we have two forwards want to stop high, or two forwards want to run to the rim. or wings want to stop early. So we've had to spend a lot more time than I had anticipated on just getting guys to run to space.
Hmm.
Um, and that
Yeah,
it's just
it's tough here too, coach.
yeah, it's just been it's always been something important to me because when I played in the league, that was the whole thing, the spacing um, of guys. Because if you didn't have space and defenses were allowed to shrink the floor, you had a big problem because dudes are big and long in that league.
Yeah, and I think though that that brings up, kind of a, like a really good point about these things that, you know, we can maybe think as coaches like, oh, our players understand like the importance of things like space and, what that looks like and getting out in a transition. But if you unless you see your guys do it, or it's something that they're able to consistently show you, you can't expect that they're going to be able to show it to you in a game, and having to stop and go over those principles. I mean, it can get a little frustrating, like you said, but definitely a little bit less frustrating to continually to go over those and make sure they get it right in practice rather than blowing those opportunities in a game.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. So yeah, I've obviously had it, like I said, spend a little more time doing that than I had anticipated.
Yeah, no, no, for sure, that definitely. Um, to kind of wrap up, Coach, before I hit our concluding segment, I was just kind of curious about your advice on this situation because I know that I had a listener specifically bring this question to my attention. So I wanted to get your input on it. He mentioned something to the extent of um, basically having a point guard who is far and away the best player on the team. And, they might be able to create shots for themselves or be able to, create everything. But, it's a bit of a struggle for the offense itself to work when, um, the other players maybe aren't necessarily at that level that the point guard is. And so I'm kind of curious about what your advice would be to a coach who maybe is in that situation where their ball handler, their point guard is far and away their best player, and how to make sure that, they can be using their skill set to make sure that the whole team's involved and that, they can actually run something on offense.
Yeah, I think number one, um, uh, especially at the high school level,
Hmm.
if your point guard's your best player, you got to let him play a little bit. You have to you have to live with some of the things that he's going to do, because if you said you made the comment that he's far and away better than the other guys,
Hmm.
obviously you don't want to alienate the other guys, uh, but you have to figure out how can you best utilize his talents to get you the baskets you need, and also how can you best utilize him to help him to get other guys easy baskets. um, because I think that's one of the things that really good point guards do. They make the game easier for people. Um, and that's one of the things that you have to teach your guards in terms of, like, if he's the best talent, how am I making this game easier for somebody? Am I giving it to my 5 man at the foul line where he's going to be in trouble? Or do I give it to him when he finally gets to the rim? You know what I mean? And those type of
Yeah.
situations. Um, so I think that that's one of the things that you have to help him utilize, both of that, his ability to create and score and his ability to make the game easier for somebody else. You know, easier, like, in terms of open shots, all those type of
Yeah,
things.
freeing up space and freeing up opportunities for other guys. Yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah, no, I agree with that also too. You gotta let him play, kind of let him work and everything. Because I imagine he's gonna be somebody who is in that situation is gonna draw a lot of attention, a lot of eyeballs. So kind of like you kind of talked about, like what's everybody else doing? How are they putting themselves into situations to take advantage of all the attention that he's getting, sort of thing.
sure,
Yeah,
sure,
definitely.
no doubt about it.
To wrap up, Coach, there's a couple questions that I ask every guest. So I'll start here with this first one, which is this might be a bit of a tough one, but thinking back on your coaching career, I know that there's a lot of moments from your coaching career. You've been involved in the game a long time, but is there a specific moment from your coaching career that you think that you could share, and that by sharing it, you hope that our listeners would be able to learn from?
Um, yeah, I think I think one of the things that you learn as a coach that's the most important thing, and again, I played for a long time, so I was on that side of it, is 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 the service part of the game.
Hmm.
Um, you know, we all think coaches with X and O's, skill development, and um, you know, rebounding for guys, all those things. But all the other things that you do for players, I think is the most important aspect of it, because that's where you build the trust with them. Um, whether it's, oh, hey, you know, like in college, hey, the guy had a class till 12 o'clock and, you know, practice at 12:30. Did you run him over a sandwich at 11:30 so he had something to eat, even though it was in class? Something like that. Little
Yeah.
service things that you do for guys to help them. Um, because all of us coach, when we coach our players hard, and we demand a lot of them. And you know, the service aspect of it, to the guys, I think is one of the things that I learned early as a coach. Like those type of things really go a long way.
Oh no, I love that a lot. I just wrote down that little scenario that you said right there. No, that's great. Appreciate it. Coach, to wrap up, I give every guest kind of what I like to call this 60-second soapbox. It's just a catchy title. You can go over 60 seconds. I don't mind. But I like to use it kind of as a way to give you kind of a final platform to get out kind of a final thought, a final message, a final idea, just something in general that you want to leave the listeners with. You can take it, any direction that you want, coaching or basketball or otherwise. I mean, it is your soapbox after all. So, Coach, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of open the floor up for you and let you take it from here.
Yeah, I think with coaching, if you coach the game, whether you coach at the pro level or the college level or the high school level or even the elementary level, you coach because you have a passion and a love for the game. Um, but one of the things that I always tell, especially young coaches, is this: like, coaching is what you do, it's not who you are.
Mm.
Because if you make it about who you are, this game can really wear you down. The wins and the losses, or having to deal with parents, or having to deal with kids, or whatever, the time it takes away from your family. Um, it's a major commitment. Anybody that's ever coached, um, realizes the commitment that you put in. And, one of the things I tell, guys who get into coaching is, man, take care of yourself. Make sure that you're taking care of your families and taking care of your bodies and eating healthy and exercising, all those things, because, if you're passionate about, like me, the wins and losses, sometimes the losses really can wear you out, and those type of things. So I just tell young coaches to really take care of themselves and prioritize, you know, their health and their families, because you're going to give everything you have to the game and to your players. And we all know how demanding that is, but make sure you're putting yourself first in that regard.
No, that's a great message because sometimes easier said than done. Sometimes I've been there, forget to eat, forget to get enough
Yeah.
sleep and everything like that, and obviously it's like, oh, I just want to look at film a little bit more, right? Or want to, get this one thing done, or you're up at night thinking about a play that happened or something like that, or a new, quick hitter or something. No, but yeah, no,
Yeah,
definitely
for
take
sure.
the game's always running for your head, but as you mentioned, right, take care of yourself and make sure that you're, at your best, as best as you can be for your players. Coach, again, really appreciate you coming on here talking about Swickley Academy, talking about your journey, talking about point guards, talking about what you like to do on offense and defense, the way guards can be leaders mentally, practice planning, a whole bunch of great stuff that we covered. Thanks again. I really do appreciate it, Coach. Thank you for coming on here and spending some time talking to us. Hopefully, it's a great rest of the season for you. Things go well, and things continue to be trending in a positive manner. Really appreciate you coming on.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Good luck to you guys too. Also, have a great season.
Thank you. And thank you all
Okay.
so much for their listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.